Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to the Story Players podcast, where we take a look back at our lives and experience in the video games industry and as video game fans ourselves. I am Winston Powell, otherwise known as Acornbringer. I might say probably better known as Acornbringer, actually. And I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Zachary Snader. How you doing, Zach?
Hello. I am doing well, Winston Powell. Thank you so much for asking.
I'll pretend like we didn't just spend a half an hour asking each other how we've been.
For sure.
For real.
Man, I had something in my... See, this is the other challenge with how my brain works, is that sometimes
we were just
I'll
talking
have
about
things.
Zach's squirrel brain.
See, and it works well that you have an acorn as your logo. That's like always there for me as just mental grounding. It's like...
Is that what this is all about?
Acorn. Yeah, exactly.
I'm anchoring you with my acorn. Your squirrel brain, I'm just keeping you.
Acorn anchor, acorn anchor, acorn anchor, acorn anchor.
Yeah. Awesome. For listeners, we're talking on Discord, and my icon is just my acorn logo.
I guess that is helpful context, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like sometimes our barrier to entry is a little high.
Sometimes. We should just advise everyone, please just skip the first 3 minutes and 21 seconds, just in any given episode. No,
it's all content.
Not this one,
it's
though.
All content.
Not this one. This
one's important. You got to stick around.
That's right.
Yeah. In fact, it's one over that of sticking around. You could even retroactively listen to our conversation from before in our exclusive extended Patreon versions of the episode.
You are so good at this. Wow.
I might get into that a little later in more detail as well.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Exciting.
Yeah, we recorded 17 episodes and we haven't launched them yet. No word of Patreon, and so we're just gonna be free, no advertisement at all throughout this entire process until we get to these later episodes, next year or whatever.
Yeah, it is funny that we've been doing this for 8 months and we're finally turning it into a thing. I kind of like that though. I feel like more podcasts.
It's becoming something.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's a flower slowly blossoming.
It's quite a bit of work, so I'd like to have some people helping.
Ooh.
Or at least know that people are listening.
Yes. If you are listening, please validate us.
Please validate us.
Also, I would, even if we had 0 people listen, I would still love to do this with you, just so you know.
It's definitely therapeutic, but it doesn't hurt to try to ask for some handouts.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, last week I kind of totally threw you under the bus and didn't let you do your thing, and I provided a topic that lasted the entire episode. So this episode, you're in the spotlight. It's all you.
Okay.
I'm curious to hear what your subject was. It didn't change, did it?
It didn't change, but I have more of a dealer's choice available. I do want to say here. Let me say a few things.
For listeners, Zach did this nice theatrical separating of his hands, like a presentation.
Look, man, I'm spiritually Italian, where I gesticulate often with my hands. Everyone
it was so
should,
welcoming. It was like I was being invited to have a nice banquet of fruits and vegetables.
You're being welcomed meats. In. Ohayuri kudasai. Come on in.
Mm-hmm.
Dozo ohayuri kudasai.
Nice accent. Good one.
Thanks, man. I'm working on it. Learning Japanese is hard. Whew, let me tell you. Okay, so I have a few potential routes we can go. First off, I want to say, the more I've actually thought about it a little bit more. If we do end up with a single topic and we have a good conversation out of it, I don't mind that too much. Yes, it's good for both of us to present one here and there, but I really don't mind you or I having the whole floor. Not to get too deep in the weeds, but if it's a good combo.
If it takes us a long time, if one topic stretches the whole hour, that's fine.
Yeah,
I don't mind.
The second thing. Okay, so you mentioned last week that we end up falling into this trap of existential dread or curiosity or something whenever we talk about the games industry and its deeper mechanics.
Today. Yeah, the games industry today.
Yeah. So there are a few directions I can go, and this is where the dealer's choice comes in.
Oh.
I can present to you something that will touch on it, that it will tap into that same kind of sentiment, right?
Okay.
Actually, 3 of the 4 topics that I have available
Oh
to
my
discuss
God.
today
What?
could go in that direction. One of them is more neutral and kind of akin to the console discussion that we had
Okay.
last week.
Let's do a cozy one.
Okay.
I feel like let's just do a cozy one, just
All
for
right.
the fact that like last week we dug into it. I was trying to make last week a cozy week, but of course,
I don't think it was. Look, man, it's so hard not to have such a keen awareness of the fucking situation that we are in. Like the moment in time that we are making video games. If you're not tapped into that in some way, I feel like it's really hard to understand what other people in this space are going through, you know? And
I think that's where we're at mentally, as being, we're in the industry and we're older, we're concerned about it, but I do want the story part of story players to kind of shine through a little more.
Fair.
After considering, like, we do talk about the industry status a lot.
Okay.
'Cause it is, it is a cynical thing. It can be a cynical thing. Let's do an easy, cozy, like, let's reminisce a little bit, sort of, put the story back in story player.
All right. I mean, it's
Now
it's all story, but
the
I get what
anticipation
you're
is now killing me. So
saying. Oh, right.
we gotta get into this topic.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I don't know why I'm hyping this up. This doesn't deserve as much build up as it's getting. I wanted to talk
Hype man.
about, I guess, the evolution of game development tools and trying to look at what the future of games development looks like without tapping into like the industry mechanics so much and more talking about the technicals, because this is like I have been a capital G capital D game developer in my life. I would argue I'm kind of one now. Like, I know how to use some of the stuff in Godot and Unreal. I couldn't make a full game on my own unless I like really put a ton of effort into it. But getting to the point where I am today, I had to go through a really weird set of iterations and tools and techniques and philosophies and all this stuff in order to get to where I am. And I do think it's interesting as someone who runs a studio to try and future cast what the development landscape might look like, because I have to make sure that I am taking as calculated a bet as possible for my studio. And I also want to set up the people on my team for success too, right? Wherever they might go, however the industry might shake out. So I thought a little bit about my own journey, what it looks like now and where it's going. So the question I want to start with to you, and I'll kind of go into my own here, is what were some of your first games development tools that you played around with? And if you were to try and coach someone going through that same experience now, what might you recommend to them as far as like making that selection and just building a good foundation for themselves to make video games?
Interesting. We actually got into this a little bit last week, right? Because we were talking about
a little bit,
the origins of. Because when I started developing, quote unquote developing, I was just making mods for Counter-Strike and making mods for Morrowind, and that's technically I'm developing something. I wasn't a game developer, but I was making stuff that I was curious about and in a game that I loved, and for to share with my friends. It wasn't something I was posting on Facebook or whatever. We didn't have social media back then. And yeah, in map makers in
we did talk about that a little bit. Okay, so I guess I'm curious then, to make it a little more focused. Like, okay, here's my question then. Like, would you recommend that people start with modding tools? If yes, which ones? And if no, what engine do you think makes sense for people like just getting into game development now? And if you were to like project out where you think games are going for someone to build a career around, or for someone to like pick up something new, how would you kind of ease them into that process?
Yeah, I definitely look at stuff more in like the indie dev lens, right? So like talking about AAA, You obviously want to learn like what the status quo is, like what the industry standards are. Unreal Engine 5 would be obviously a no-brainer. The tools that they use, I imagine they're using a lot of Blender now, and probably I don't know. Do people still use ZBrush? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Like so stuff like that. I'm like Cinema 4D even to make game assets is something that you could still do, right? Making game effects in Cinema 4D was impossible before because it wouldn't fit in the game engine, but now it's doable. So like you want to look at what's trending in the industry as a AAA developer if that's your aspiration. But when I talk to indie developers, which is usually who I'm talking to anyway, they have the pick of the litter. Like making a game is your own thing. As long as it runs on an operating system, it's a valid thing. So like if you're just getting started, I recommend like don't turn your nose up at RPG Maker. It's a solid game developing thing. I played around with this thing called Twine, which is just a text-based story. Yeah, it's a story thing. Very easy to get into. If you just have a story you want to, or you mean you can program variables into it. You can make a game out of it. You can make an RPG, text RPG, just make an adventure. So like, I don't want to like shoehorn anyone because I honestly think as like an indie developer, whatever works for you works for you. Just go for it. I wouldn't ever say like you have to do Unreal, you have to do Unity, stay away from this, stay away from that. Like as long as you're making a product that fulfills your dream, like what you're imagining, it doesn't matter what you're doing it with. And I brought up RPG Maker because I recently recommended someone, one of those types of people who are like, they want to develop something. They're rarely into their story that they have for their lore and stuff. They're just not like, they're not putting their hand in the dough, They're just like, it's not ready yet. There needs to be this thing that I need a tutorial or whatever. It's like, no, like RPG Maker, just get in there. And the game is made already. All the systems are there. You just need to add the story and tell the player where to walk. Like just do that. And that's your first game done. So I wouldn't restrict anyone to something like that. And Twine, if you've seen it, it's so simple, so easy. It's an HTML thing. Another great place to start for a developer. I think Unity is also like, there's some like weird drama with Unity, but Unreal and Unity, they both have like visual scripting. So that's really easy barrier to entry. As like from my point of view, I don't know coding or anything like that. Like that was a nice, like kind of a blessing for me to learn that I could create a game in Unity without touching code. That was a big thing. That's kind of what pushed me to go with Playmaker with my game when I found out about that. And I just went for it.
I want to ask you a follow-up question on that before it veers too far. So with that specifically, do you feel that you had to do a lot of like self-taught kind of bridging gaps in your knowledge when it came to how to visually script in Unity? Or do you feel like there was like enough resources available for you, whether it's people you can ask questions to or places you can ask questions or documentation or tutorials or whatever it might be, that you were able to overcome those hurdles without it being a significant blocker for you to accomplish your development goals?
I don't think anyone should ever be discouraged from learning any software or any discipline as long as they have a connection to the internet. And I learned everything I knew about every software I use through YouTube tutorials and browsing forums. Like I had an idea of what I wanted to make. That was my goal, my end goal. I went for it. I didn't think about it. I just went for it. And as soon as I hit one of those roadblocks, you know what to look for now online. Like, how do I do this now? You find a tutorial, you do it, you move on, and then you finish this thing. And that's why I never recommend like just waiting for tutorials, waiting for a course. Even paying for courses. I know people got to make money, and I have like a course on how to like rig. But like an official, I have I don't know if I told you about the plural site thing.
No, I've seen it. But you put so much time and effort into constructing like a focused curriculum on that, right?
Yeah, that's like a full on. That's a course. I call that a course.
Yeah,
not a tutorial. That's a whole course.
Dude, like
it's like 5 hours long or something.
I went through. I watched a 10-hour tutorial on making 2D games in Unreal. And it was really cool. It was really cool. But it was also like, here's the steps one after another in order to do the thing. What I realized
do you have a 2D game in Unreal right now?
Yeah, I mean, I made
You made one?
the game from the tutorial, but it's just like it's not
Okay.
even a full game. It has a character, the character can jump, da da da, and like
Right.
I went through the process of setting up like a camera system and setting up objects that had collision and making sure there was gravity and doing some visual scripting connections and all that. But
Mhm.
I think the challenge with a lot of that stuff is that it's just telling you how to do things and not necessarily teaching you how to do them. Um,
Yeah. I think
I
it goes back to what we were just talking about with like, wait, was that was before? That's in the bonus content, the pre-show.
for sure.
We were talking about different learning hats, like different learning types of people. And some people, they watch a tutorial and they learn all they need. They absorb it like a sponge and they can just do it afterwards, like do the stuff afterwards. Whereas a lot of other people, they might learn by doing themselves or setting their own sort of curriculum. That's another quote unquote curriculum for themselves. And then other people just, they read the manual and they're good. You know, like there's all these different types of learning. So yeah, you need to know what kind of learner you are before you jump into a big tutorial course, because it might not be worth it for you. You might come out the other end like, yeah, I went through all the steps, but I don't remember any of it. Or like, you know, there wasn't enough context for me to latch onto this information. Whereas if you did it on your own, like me, for example, like I learned by doing, that stuff kind of solidifies itself because I had a reason to look up the tutorial. I had a
Yeah.
reason to do everything I did along the way, and I had an objective, and there was like urgency behind everything that I did. Whereas I think tutorials for me personally is like a little more passive learning. It's like half of it. Like it's the information, but not the necessity or urgency. Like that's half of the thing. When you're making something, you need both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, I need like a goal at the end. That's not just like my goal is to have the knowledge at the end. No, my goal is to have a product at the end. And whatever it takes for me to get to the end there, I'm learning all along the way anyway. And, you know, I'm getting all those skills and stuff and finding nice resources and stuff. Yeah.
So you have a much more open approach than I do, I think. Not that I wouldn't encourage anyone to just pick up whatever tool empowers you to make a game, but I think I would encourage people to maybe focus in a specific direction depending on what their goals were. I'm curious though. So you went from modding tools for Morrowind and Counter-Strike. Was Unity the first like bona fide engine that you picked up?
I mean, I didn't. Oh, actually, no. I remember when we were in high school, there's this engine called the Torque engine.
Dude, yes!
Does that sound familiar?
I
Really?
used Torque in high school. Torque,
Really?
yes, that was the first like 3D engine that I ever used. That's so
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean-
I've never talked to anyone else that used Torque. Because
That's
Torque,
funny.
I think
I mean-
Torque was the engine that was used to make Tribes, if you remember Tribes.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely has the look there.
Yeah.
From what I remember.
Yeah. Fuck, that's insane, dude. Oh, that makes me
I mean,
so happy.
a friend of mine found, he was more forward, like, you know, he was more looking for this stuff, like actually kind of, whereas I was just kind of sitting around him, you know, just watching him mess around with in the engine and stuff. So I didn't ever have it installed on my computer, but we installed it in the school's computers. I just screwed around with the variables. There was like scenes that you could just mess around with stuff, and just to kind of play with it. We're just sort of chewing on it.
Yeah,
Never
dude,
made
you
any
could
projects
you
or
could
anything.
you can like actually paint landscape. So you could paint geometry in Torque.
Oh,
I remember
Yeah,
that
that-
very distinctly.
I remember so little about it, but I remember it having like had physics and it had
Yeah.
like some like we're talking about really early on. I'm saying special textures, like high detail textures, but I think they just basically got to normal maps and that was where it stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of early tools that I just played with. I remember this like 3D software I used called Cartography Shop,
Okay.
which was basically the way you'd model things in the Hammer editor, which was the source engine
Yeah.
map maker. Very similar, so it was a nice thing to learn, and then I jumped right into the Hammer map maker to do that stuff. This is just stuff I was just curious about, you know. I didn't like,
Okay.
I wasn't like, I'm going to learn to be a game developer. It was like, no, I want to screw around with this and just see, because it's cool to make environments. Like it was at that stage in life where I was just like, I have like a dream of this like war-torn battleground or whatever, like a World War I, like foxhole, you know, with passageways and bridges and stuff all made of wood and, you know, stuff like this, and little castles and fortified barracks. And so I would just go into the thing and make it just for my own like gratitude or whatever. What's the word? Gratification. And that was the end of it. but it just led to more and more interest, more and more things. And then eventually I was just like, I like making games. I want to go to school for it. And it was in college where I actually got to learn a little bit of Unreal and Unity and some actual like industry standard tools. And so that's all where that went from there. So, and it was just all play back then. It wasn't like before college, it was totally play. It wasn't me trying to learn things. In fact, it was like what I did instead of learning in school. I like went home and screwed around in the Hammer editor and made maps for my friends. And that was like a fun thing for me to do as opposed to doing my homework, which I did not do.
Right on. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So learning was never the objective. It was just like I enjoyed creating things, and that was it. I say it in the past tense because do I enjoy creating things anymore?
Oh, now we're going to get into
a question to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're going to get uncozy.
The metaphysical aspects of being an artist.
Yeah. So you messed with Torque back in high school too?
Yeah, dude. Torque was the first. So the first like I don't know, game creation tools I messed with were, I don't even know the name of the software. It was back probably in like 96 or 97. My dad got me this game where you could build side-scrolling narrative adventures. So basically the way it worked is you construct a scene, like a point-and-click adventure, and you could place objects within this level. So you can make a backdrop with trees, and you could have a foreground with, characters and objects and whatever. That was the first like game creation tool I ever messed with, but I didn't mess with an engine until Torque. I played around with the Hammer editor a little bit. And I played around with modding tools and stuff too. But yeah, dude, Unreal and Unity I didn't mess around with until Unreal was like late high school, and then Unity was early college. Yeah. But yeah, then I fell off games development for a while and I didn't really use any engines. Then when I did start to pick things up again, I checked out RPG Maker and kind of checked out Game Maker. I taught a class on how to use Multimedia Fusion and the Neverwinter Nights engine, or the Neverwinter Nights modding tool. It was
I didn't know that.
Was it? It's not Gamebryo, right? It's oh my god, ice, something with ice, frost? No, not Frostbite. Oh, what's it called? I forget. But the Neverwinter Nights mod set, you can make full D&D campaigns in, basically.
Oh, cool.
Hella janky. Hella janky, especially compared to something like Baldur's Gate 3. But
I never played this, but I remember seeing this cover, because I'd go to Walmart to get PC games when I was a kid, and I remember seeing the cover. Man, finding games and playing games back then was so much better than it is now.
Oh my god!
You go and you look at this you grab this cardboard box, this glossy cardboard box, and it would open up with a little Velcro tab on it. And inside it would be this booklet style,
you could read the manual
for the game.
And we sound like such
so
old men now.
nice.
It was really sick.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so funny because that's kind of how games were sold to some degree as well. It's you go to the game shop.
Off the covers.
Yeah. Does the cover look nice?
Guild Wars.
All right.
I bought Guild Wars because there was that hot goth girl cover. I was just maybe I should give this a try.
Man. Yeah, Guild Wars. I got to review that, and I got a free copy of it. That was a whole.
What? You reviewed the first Guild Wars?
Yeah, for I don't know if you remember Aaron, but Aaron's he had a games.
Oh, for the school thing, or
yeah, it was his own little side project
thing.
Oh,
that's cool.
But yeah,
I remember him.
He bought me Guild Wars. I'm super grateful. I only played it for 2 hours though, because
oh yeah, you totally qualified to review it.
I know.
Guild Wars is awesome. I still get nostalgic for that. I'm not a big MMO person, but I still get nostalgic for that opening area in the first Guild Wars.
It seems cool, but I still
just cozy.
Don't really know how MMOs work all that well, honestly.
Yeah, I think we could talk about MMOs sometime. That'd be a good topic. Maybe I'll bring that up.
That'd be good because I know nothing. I am very much outside looking in when it comes to MMOs. Yeah, but yeah, man, didn't really play with game engines too much for a long time, and then I just as of late, picked up Godot again. Kind of got into Game Maker a little bit, 5 or so years ago. But yeah, otherwise it's just been Godot ever since. And Oh yeah, I guess I played around with Unreal last year as well because I was
Mm-hmm.
I was super into the idea of making a game that had the 2.5 HD kind of thing going on, like Octopath Traveler, because I thought
Okay.
that the pixel art plus like luminous lighting looked so good. I still think it
Cool.
looks incredible.
It looks okay. I like it all right.
But then again, like Noida exists, and that's all like flat 2D pixel. I mean,
Yeah.
it's or voxels. Yeah, I guess it's voxels, but it looks 2D.
Yeah.
Um,
That's something that I kind of want to talk on to more to the topic is like people have an idea of what they want to make a lot of times. I think when people are early on getting into development, they have like, oh, I want to make a Dark Souls, but with mixed with like Star Wars and mixed with like God of War. And like they have this idea because, most people play AAA games.
yeah,
And so they get this glossy like image of what they want to create in their head, and they don't start until they think they can reach that point, which is impossible. It's an
yeah.
impossible goal.
Because as
right?
soon as you open up an
Whereas,
editor
like,
and you're like, all right, I'm gonna make my Dark Souls Star Wars game, it's like, oh, holy shit! How
yeah,
did
like
they
there's
do
like
this?
the simplest games are still oh so
Yeah,
complex. Like just
yeah.
making Pong, like just start there. So like one thing I wanted to say on that, if anyone's listening that's like trying to get into making a game, is like don't pay attention to like what it's gonna look like. Just go into it and make the best you can. And the only like advice I think that you need is just make something that looks consistent throughout. Whether it looks
Mm,
consistently bad or consistently low fidelity or whatever you can manage, like as long as it's consistent, it'll still look good. Like you could argue that like the Salt and Sanctuary art style is kind of amateurish. This is an older game. I don't know if you've played Salt and Sanctuary. It's like a Dark
I'm
Souls
familiar with
game.
it. Yeah, the 2D. It's 2D.
Yeah, it's the style itself is I would say it's not a master like artist making these
Mm,
things. It's not like amazing pixel art. It's kind of like it's they can still improve. There's a lot of room for improvement, but where they need no improvement is the consistency and the quality is consistent throughout, and the lighting is really nice, and the color palette's very very appealing and everything. And in that way, that game, even though to me like that art style I wouldn't choose, it works really well for the game, and it works great as the visuals for that game. Like it works so well despite itself. And so like if you can use that as like a baseline, just get your style down and get the colors looking nice, the color palettes and everything. That stuff is a bit easier than like making high fidelity assets and stuff.
mm.
So anyway, that was my little soapbox on
No,
that
I,
thing.
I, I like that a lot because you're actually challenging my own thinking on how people should approach tooling. The, it's hard, man, because like, yes, you should just go make games. Like Pirate Software says, like just go make video games, and really just do
Mhm.
that. Just do that. Just find a way, find what works for you, and make games. But there is
Yeah.
also this level of investment into how you develop as a game developer, because if you are going to do this long term, I do feel that every single step of that journey, I'm not saying you have to like min max it or optimize it to its fullest, but putting yourself in the best position to succeed by maximizing the intention around your strategy in which you make games, I think that's a good thing to have some idea about before you really get started, because there are so many people making games now. And if it is something that you have commercial ambitions around, it's really important for you to build a style for yourself and be able to distinguish yourself as well, whether you want to be indie or AAA or something in between or whatever. And that's why I kind of lean in the direction of like trying to do multiple things in a specific engine, and not just like, hey, I made this completed project and it was in RPG Maker and da da da, but like, hey, I made this really shitty game in Godot, but here I learned how to like cast classes across scripts or something like that. I'm not even sure if that terminology is correct. I think it is. But like those kind of things, right? Where you're learning these deeper techniques around how that engine works and around how games development works to implement more complex ideas. To me, I think that time is still if I was to compare it with a value, I do think it's a little bit more worth it. And that's why I kind of think like, hey, maybe pick an engine and play with that and like learn some concepts. And if that engine's not working for you, like, can you take those concepts that you've learned and apply them to new tooling? So that way you're consistently growing as opposed to like moving horizontally over and over again and never necessarily like moving upward in that trajectory, if that makes sense. But I could be looking at it wrong. I don't really know. It's just that's sort of my layman's experience right now.
I wonder if one of the bigger problems nowadays, because this was an issue when we were getting started, was people are spoiled for choice now.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have options. They could use all these different tools, and a lot of them are free or like super affordable. Whereas when we were getting started, I only knew about the Hammer editor. I only knew about Torque. I didn't know that there was like, I didn't even know Maya existed back then. I didn't even know Unity probably existed back then, and Unreal certainly existed back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just didn't know about that. And I was just like looking for free engines, you know. I was on Google just like free game engine. Bargain bin game engines. And so I just went with that. And even though it wasn't like what I'm doing now, I never made a game with that stuff. Like, you still get acquainted with how development works, and that's all valuable stuff. Just learning how things go into an engine, the engine renders things, player input, exporting your game, like, you know, stuff like that. Like, that's all valuable. So I wonder if that's a challenge people have, is like, because a lot of people ask me like, do I start with Unreal or Unity? And I can't recommend one because it's just like really just it's just like just pick one. I don't know, like if you're looking for high fidelity graphics, you want to go with Unreal, I suppose. Even though I think Unity's kind of got some nice showcases nowadays with their modern engine. Yeah. But do you want to deal with their weird, like, I don't know, licensing stuff?
Yeah. They rolled back.
People get hung up on it, and I totally understand, but I don't think I would just say just start with RPG Maker or something simple like that, because that's like, you don't need to make a lot of assets either. There's so many assets that come with it. It's like basically making a game in Minecraft. Like, all the assets are there. You just build something, like it's already existing as a game engine, as a game itself, and just go with it.
Yeah, I made some games in Little Big Planet. And I guess
Little Big Planet, that was another one. Yeah, totally. I made a couple levels in Little Big Planet for sure. Yeah, that was awesome. No, I used to love that stuff.
I feel that, man. Like, yeah, especially if you're just starting out, like making a portfolio and understanding how to solve game development challenges is probably your biggest objective. But yeah, interesting. I think there's maybe more we could unpack here, but also I want to respect the time, so I'm going to cede my time on the floor to you to go into
this time for
topic.
Me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. What was the one thing I was gonna say just to cap that off?
For sure.
I think it's totally left me. Oh, basically a finished like game project in your portfolio is better than really anything else. So just make a game in 100%. RPG Maker and publish it on itch. And that looks better on a portfolio than anything else. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that was really was that like the root of the question. I can't remember anymore.
I don't know. It was kind of I think it might have been a little too big, because like it's kind of about our own journeys, which we didn't really tap into very much. And also what the future maybe looks like for someone that's working.
Oh, the future. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't get into the future.
I mean, I think you kind of tapped on it though, right? Like, maybe it's just best to do whatever works best for you. I think that
probably is a timeless thing. Like, things are always going to change. Engines are going to appear and disappear, and the known ones are going to stick around, and but the method of making games hasn't changed since its inception. Like, just get into a program, tell it what to do, and export it. That's not going to change. I don't think that's going to change. So, but all right,
Mr. First Principles.
I had another topic, but let's just go with this one because we were just talking about it.
Okay.
MMOs.
Oh goodness. All right.
So, I always really was fascinated with the idea of MMOs. I think when it first started, because you're just like, oh, online but with millions of people. Like, I think that's the hook to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a game, but online with millions of people, which is like the kind of the promise of it. My perspective on that though is that MMO is now a genre and no longer like a format of game. Because I think the idea, the kind of the promise of an MMO, if you're just talking about like back before a bunch of MMOs existed, like when the idea was new, like a game that you can play with millions of people, I think that promise is a game like any other, with the mechanics and stuff, action, combat, and everything. Maybe what's a popular one, like a game that plays kind of like God of War or something, where it's a top down, running around, slashing and jumping around and stuff, but online with millions of people. And I think that promise has been lost. My issue with MMOs nowadays is that the MMO is a genre that describes like this kind of clunky, zoomed all the way out, like, not really live action combat, but you're just pressing a button.
I see what you mean.
To tell the character to do a move.
Okay.
And that's what MMOs are. They're not actual games where you can play with millions of people. They're MMOs that you play online.
I see.
And I feel like that promise is only now maybe just barely getting tapped into with MMORPGs, with action combat and all sorts of stuff like that. And also just the fact that MMORPG is usually the genre that MMOs assume. Whereas an MMO could be a first-person shooter, a third-person action game, could be, a turn-based game, any of these different genres. But we decided on MMORPG because it fits that framework so well, because it's so optimized for like sending web packages or whatever, So I feel like the promise hasn't been fulfilled. As cozy as I remember, like, Guild Wars 1 being and stuff, like, it's cozy and you get to be with your friends, and even like RuneScape I had some fun with too. I don't think that promise has been fulfilled, at least for me. Maybe it's a promise I made to myself. I don't know who was promising it to me, but I still don't see a regular game that you play with millions of people nowadays, even though the idea of an MMO has been around forever. Just hasn't really like bloomed, hasn't blossomed.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's an interesting way to look at things. Let me sidestep real quick to give you some context on my experience with MMOs, because I think it colors my own perspective a bit.
Right.
I played WoW for like 7 minutes in 8th grade. I was at my friend's house. He had an account. I went into a forest. I tried to fight some pigs. I didn't know what I was doing. I got killed by the pigs. I died, and then I had to run back and get my body as a ghost. And I was like, "Oh, wow, this fucking sucks. Why does anyone play this? This is so boring." And then I turned it off, and I have, swear to God, not touched WoW since. I don't even know if I've looked at it. And I know if you're a WoW player and you hear that, you're probably just like, your skin is crawling. Because my experience, it seems like it is the rarity, where I played it for a few minutes and hated it.
It's funny you say that, because I had the exact same experience with
WoW?
A friend gave me, with World of Warcraft.
Okay.
My friend was always talking about it, and I was like, I don't want to play it, whatever, I don't want to play it. And he eventually gave me like a free demo key or something. Like, there was a free demo weekend. I downloaded it, I installed it, I played it, and there was something like similar to what you said, where I died and I had to walk back to my body. Or I got a quest and realized I had to walk all the way back to the origin of the quest after I finished it. It was just a matter of walking, and I was like, I'm not doing that. And I closed it and never opened it again.
Dude, for Guild Wars 2, that was kind of what happened to me. I ended up, I made an account, loaded the game up. I end up in this hub area. I see a whole ton of other people, and I'm just walking around talking to different characters, trying to figure out how to get the first quest. And I'm sure this says more about me as a player than Guild Wars 2 as a game, but I couldn't figure out how the fuck to get my quest and just leave the hub. I was messing around with it for 2 hours. It looked really pretty. There was lots of people. I was like, I'm sure this would be cool if I got to do anything, but I didn't. And so I got bored, and I was like, why would I spend more time with this? And then I left. That sucks.
I think that's really telling. I think that's really telling, that because I think there's a literacy problem. Like, you expect an RPG when you jump into an MMORPG.
But that's why I think your perspective is so interesting, right?
Yeah, but I think people who are literate in MMO know exactly what to do. That's why their skin is crawling right now.
Right.
But like a regular gamer who expects a certain thing out of a game, they don't get that with MMOs because MMOs is a genre now. It's like,
Yes.
you know, you have to look at your quest log. You know, you have to find a guy with the triangle over his head or whatever. You know, you have to like click buttons instead of talking to anyone.
Yeah.
You click
Yeah.
the options and you collect your reward, and crafting is a button click. It's not like real crafting. It's like everything is such an abbreviation of what a real game is, but there's so much of it. And I think that in that way, it's kind of created its own genre. Like, it's cozy. There's community, a lot of dances you could do or whatever, in-app purchases you can do, you know, before it was called in-app purchases. And I think that's a literacy issue. And I think that's an issue with the genre, with the game, with an MMO, with the, you know, with how people
like a traditional
MMOs.
MMO RPG, you mean, right?
Yeah. Because what I want is Dark Souls.
Yeah,
online.
Dark Souls with friends. You know? Yeah, totally.
With friends, like that's the dream. But we're so far away from that with modern MMOs. Like, that's just not the way they function. They're their own thing.
They really are. I think you have a salient point here, because if I think
salient,
of,
huh?
Yes, because if I think
nice
about
podcast word.
Oh yes, hang on, let me get my thesaurus out. If I think about Grand Theft Auto 5 online, right? GTA 5 online is arguably the second biggest MMO that's ever existed besides World of Warcraft. But you wouldn't think about it that way, right? Because it's GTA 5. It's an open world action game, or however you want it.
You mention it.
Yes, because
you can own a condo and have airplanes.
Dude, 100%. It's more of an RPG than most MMO RPGs, right? Like in Final Fantasy 14, I mean, sure, you are role playing as whatever the fuck happens in Final Fantasy 14. I have no idea.
Why'd you mention it?
Because I know it's an MMO.
You play as a rabbit, right? A bunny.
Is that how the game works? You're just a rabbit the whole time? It's a rabbit.
I think you can become
MMO?
Animals. I don't know. No, I don't know anything about it either.
I have no clue. No, but like, you are literally role playing as a person in this little GTA universe that you've created for yourself. And it's still one of the biggest games in the world, and it has been for 10 years, right? How is that any less of an MMO than World of Warcraft? And
no, I think that's
you could
totally
arguably
valid.
extend that to like Fortnite also, and even Roadblocks.
Sure.
Oh my God, I just said Roadblocks like a boomer. Roblox. Yes, you might not be like sharded into some instance that is part of the same universe as every other player, right? But I think you've kind of opening my eyes to the fact that it doesn't make it any less of like a massively multiplayer online game, right? It's just
and even an MMO is instance based.
Right.
Like, you're in a server with a certain amount of people, and when you're in an area, it's not like everyone's loaded into the
exactly
game.
Like, it's still splintering in so many different ways. I mean, Diablo 4 even tried, and I would argue failed, but they did try to do this, where they still kind of had that like pseudo instanced world where you were just there with tons of other players. Like, maybe it was only 8 or 16 or 24 at a time, however many it was. But those are still just players like cycling through these hoppers.
And that's kind of the most you interact with it in an MMO anyway. Like, I know there's big raids in World of Warcraft or whatever, but like, if you really count the people, it's not like you're actually playing with the millions or thousands of people at once. It's just not. It's like the idea of it that's interesting, and they fulfill kind of a veiled idea with actual MMOs, where there's a you can imagine out there on the hillside is people running around doing their thing, or beyond those mountains there's people doing stuff, but it's not true. Like, you're in an instance all the time. Like, that wouldn't be optimized to be keeping track of all that stuff.
I mean, there are games that are like trying to do that, where instances or shards, whatever, have like thousands of players in them at a time instead of hundreds or even a few dozen. But dude, to this day, the game that I played where there were the most people in a match simultaneously was MAG, Do you remember Mag?
Oh my god, I was waiting for you to say it. Yeah, I was waiting for you to say Mag.
Dude,
Yeah.
I actually played Mag on a PS3. I bought a physical copy of that game. I wish I kept it because that would be such a great museum piece for my
What a
children
legend.
someday. I know.
Yeah.
But I
It's a
played
museum
Mag,
piece.
and it was, Mag was fucking sick. I thought
how many
Mag
people was that?
I think it was 100, like 100 or 128, something like that.
Okay, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Battlefield 2042 also allowed for that many people. So, hey, Mag was well ahead of its time. But even if Battlefield 2042 has like 128 people in a match at the same time, like how many other games are really doing that these days?
I had to look up this and see how ugly this game is.
Like I know Improbable, I'm pretty sure it's Improbable. They have technology that's been pushed out in prototypes.
This actually looks.
Hey,
Sorry,
does Mag hold up?
It doesn't, like they're showing, there's a screenshot here of like a little mining town with a church in the middle. It kind of looks like a paintball course, like, you know, one of the really nice ones with facade buildings.
Yeah.
It doesn't look bad. I remember they were doctoring their screenshots back then, like game publishers were. Doesn't look too bad, honestly, for the scope of it. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, that's all right. The Mag distraction. No, I was just saying that like there is technology that's being worked on to allow for these larger instances of people to like be in the same worlds together. And I think even Star Citizen, when they released their latest demo, they were talking about how like people are just in your universe in real time. And I guess I don't know how they do that server side or anything, but yeah, it's still kind of all a facade, I think is sort of the point. So to your point, maybe it doesn't really matter if an MMO is Fortnite or Roblox as opposed to an MMORPG in the way that we would traditionally think about it, like World of Warcraft or Ultima or RuneScape or something like that, right? Like they are kind of all MMOs at the end of the day. But I love this line of thinking, because if you just like don't get so fixated on the connection of MMO and WoW, you really can think about large multiplayer frameworks in the context of any other kind of game. Like, what if God of War Ragnarok was just a large multiplayer game? Like, sure, I could totally see that working, right? Yeah, that's interesting. I love that.
The moment where I saw this, like I was kind of stung most by this issue I have with the genre of MMO, is when they were like, we're gonna make an Elder Scrolls MMO.
Yeah,
and like the promise of that is Skyrim, but your friends are there, right? Like that's the promise. That's whenever people were asking for a multiplayer Elder Scrolls game, that's what they wanted. They wanted Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind, whatever, with your friends there too. And so when they announced the MMO, you're immediately like, totally, this is perfect. This works out perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. But there's the MMO, the Elder Scrolls MMO is such a far cry from the gameplay and the feel and the look of even Skyrim, because it is an MMO, because the people who are making are MMO makers, and it now looks and feels and plays like an MMO. And I feel like they did they put a lot of effort into trying to make it still feel like a first person RPG, because it is an option to play in first person, but it still becomes MMO, the genre MMO. And I'm using genre in quotes because that's what I'm afraid of.
No, like, I totally get what you mean. It's not
transformed.
It's not Skyrim with friends. It's Skyrim, the MMORPG about Elder Scrolls with friends. Right?
And I think that's not a negative thing, but it's just not like where I was going with that line of thought. Like, you wanted just Skyrim with multiplayer, with however many players in the world, existing in the same big world. But instead, they were like, this is the format of what MMOs are now, so we're going to do that. Where like you have button presses or hotkeys to do your moves. The inventory system is whatever, like, and crafting is whatever. I don't know. I didn't play too long of the Elder Scrolls game, but that's where I really felt that dissonance between what an RPG is and what an MMORPG is.
Yeah.
And, it's arguable whether Skyrim is truly RPG and not just a first-person action kind of fantasy. But still, you understand what I mean. It's just like, that's a game that you play single player, and then this other thing is an MMO themed like an Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah,
and that was disappointing to me because I just want Skyrim with friends.
Yeah, there's Ghostcrawler, if you know who that is, his name's Greg Street. He he's working on a studio, Magic Pixel Kitchen. I'm probably butchering the name, but I'm pretty sure oh man, was he at Riot or Activision? I can't remember.
Get your facts straight, Zach.
Yeah, I know. I'm a terrible games industry person, but no, he's been talking a lot on LinkedIn one of the few reasons to go on LinkedIn is to look at his posts, because he's very open about how they're developing their MMO, and he's been sharing a lot about how like they're trying to do MMOs different, and I guess I never really thought about what that would even mean, because MMOs have felt such like the same product for such a long time. And I, as a player, was so turned off by my own experiences that I never really thought they could be anything other than just like the World of Warcrafts of the world. But now you've got me, like between what Ghostcrawler Studio is doing and between your kind of thinking around this, it does lead me to wonder what this genre could be and just how they can be more accessible. Like, how can you redefine the word MMO to be a more inclusive thing that bridges the gap between like Elder Scrolls Online versus, hey, is Fortnite an MMO maybe? Question mark. Like, how can you just make great, massively multiplayer experiences regardless of what genre they might attach to, right? Like,
yeah, I wonder if using this as a first-person MMO or whatever for PUBG when it came out would have hurt it, because I know it wasn't promoted that way. It was just like, oh, this is just a whatever, an Arma mod or something like that. Whatever, I don't remember the origin story.
I think DayZ was the Arma mod, and then
Right.
PUBG spun off from DayZ, possibly, maybe. Yeah.
But it wasn't marketed that way, although it does kind of qualify as an MMO because, there's 100 people or whatever in the map at once. The server is split up.
Are battle
in a
royales
similar way.
MMOs? Controversial take from Winston Powell.
It's just a big online. You're seeing more people in the map than any other game, as far as I'm concerned. It's at least an MO. It's a BMO. It's a big multiplayer online.
Yeah, for sure.
But like in that same train of thought, it's like if you were to tack on the term MMO to your new online product, it would have that connotation, negative or positive, depending on the person. And so I wonder if it would be advantageous to have your game just feature a massive amount of multiplayer people and not say anything, and just have it be a fact about the game. And then you don't color people's kind of look at what it's going to be. Like, it's going to be kind of this, I don't know, when I picture MMOs, I picture like kind of stilted movement and animation and like camera zoomed way back out. So you can't see, you can only see like everything around you. You can't focus on your own character, and crafting that's like kind of abbreviated version of what crafting could really be. And like, stuff that's kind of like,
you click and hold on your action until the action is completed, whether it's crafting or combat or whatever. Like that's the trope in my mind.
Yeah. There's a coziness to that. It's easy, you can kind of just sit there and you can talk to your friends while you do that stuff. That's totally a thing that's nice about MMOs. But yeah, I think that not using that, because like I've been mentioning Dark Souls or Elden Ring or something, like that works pretty similar to how an MMO works, where there are people passing by. You just can't interact with them in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
But there's always people around you, and that's similar to how MMOs work. It's not like the whole world is loading in. Like, there's a certain amount of people that were pulled in to be visible for you because of the server or whatever. And yeah, I think that functions kind of similarly as an MMO. That would be,
Okay, so what? All right. So what makes an MMO then? Like, is it the intentionality behind sharding instances where you have a set number of
sharding? You can't say that.
I mean, where you are
I've never heard that before.
Shards? I don't know.
Is that a server term? I don't know.
Yeah, a shard is like a collection of it's a collection of instanced worlds, right? I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Because you can't have a million players in the game at the same time in the same place. So I believe the server is like broken into small.
Okay.
The game
so you might
is
be
broken
in a
into smaller servers, which are shards, and those have a collection of instances. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I've never designed an MMO framework, and I suck at DevOps, so Yeah, ignore what I'm saying. But like, is it the intentionality of having those collections of instances, those collections of shards? Is that what makes a game massively multiplayer, as opposed to having just like multiplayer that happens to have a lot of people, regardless of what the type of gameplay is? I think that's a really interesting question to explore further. And maybe we, as gamers and as developers, have a long way to go to really expand our thinking and our consumption around these types of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, people like it. Like, there's people that like. I like a cozy MMO. Like, depending on the art style.
Yeah,
and
but like,
if it's just something.
but that's what
relaxed I can
MMOs
play.
have been, right? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the point that you're saying.
Yeah, no. I mean, the idea is that like people are so sold on this idea that they only invest in this type of MMO that we have yet to see kind of that original aspiration that I had anyway for what a massively multiplayer online game could have been.
Yes.
Which is something like Elden Ring, but online, or, where like the combat feels good. It's all about the combat. There's meaningful interactions with enemies. It's not just like you're going into a field slaughtering a bunch of like spiders,
Mm-hmm.
with magical spells, and then running back and giving their hearts to a farmer, but like actual interesting combat, meaningful interactions, encounters with stuff. And that's like what's missing. And I feel like because of how popular MMOs are, we might not see something like that for a long time yet, That's my issue with it. Because I'm game for MMOs if it looks pretty. But at this point, like, it's taken over the genre. There's not a lot of room for... Because it's like the issue that the Pokemon games have, where, like, they're doing the minimum viable product each installment. I know I'm going to upset a lot of people, but they're not that different each one. And they kind of maybe just change the story around a little bit. We're not seeing that ideal Pokemon game because of it, because they can get by
where you're just like
a little bit.
You're a trainer in a world of trainers, and like you can just go to villages and like you see other trainers
a fully
there, that
open
kind of thing.
world. Like even an MMO, Pokemon MMO would be better than would be more of the idea of what I think people expect out of a Pokemon game. Except for there are fans of the classic RPG Pokemon game, which is fine too. But I still think Pokemon as a thing, you kind of want just an open world where you're literally setting out on an adventure, just like Ash Ketchum was, in the first series.
Yeah.
Exploring the world, physically exploring the world.
God, his name is Ash Ketchum.
Yep. Yep. Bianca was showing me, she was like trying to get me to watch some of a nostalgia trip watching those old episodes. And I just, aside from like, I don't know, a couple episodes here and there, it was such a drag. And then when Team Rocket appeared, I'm just like, oh, not again. Such a time sink to like listen to their song, and then they got to do something, then they got to fail, and then they get blasted off again or whatever. Oh my god, I have such a hard time watching that.
But his name is Ash Ketchum. That's really
Ash
the problem
Ketchum.
Here. His name is Ash Ketchum.
That's the problem. We need to take it to.
We need to talk to
Pentagon.
Mr. Video Games.
Yeah,
Mr. Ubisoft, please. Ubisoft is going to fix
the
all
classic
of our,
developers
the Pokemon company
of Pokemon. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, why was I talking about Pokemon? Oh, just because there's an
MMO.
idea there that like, there's an idea that of a Pokemon game that I think hasn't yet to be fulfilled because it's so much more efficient to make them the way they've been being made. The same goes for MMO, where like the idea of MMOs can't be fulfilled because what they're making, there's that it's less investment.
Man.
I would imagine. I'm sure they're expensive, but
You have me wanting to
less of
make
a
an
risk
MMO,
as well.
buddy.
Again,
I think
that's like every developer says that once in their life.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah,
I finally found the the great dragon to ride as a game developer.
Oh no, you don't want to go there.
Would it not be really cool to like sort of reinvent what this genre could be though? Well, a genre.
at some
genre.
point-
It's not even a genre. It's a feature. It's a feature.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not even
exactly.
a genre.
That's
the
why I'm
whole
using
crux
invisible
of this.
air quotes.
Yeah.
It's not a.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a genre, but it is now a genre, right? That's the whole. That's the crux of it.
Very interesting.
I would love like what was a game? Because this is like tapping into some aspirations that I had as a kid, and I wonder what game I was thinking of. I was probably thinking of like those old Lord of the Rings EA games.
Oh.
Like, if this was an MMO, That'd be so
Man,
cool.
those were sick. The
Something
PS2
like that,
ones?
maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
Two Towers and
Yes.
and
So good, dude.
and The Return of the King. Those are classics.
Yeah.
I love those, both of them.
Very good games.
But yeah, just with that combat. Oh no, like Onimusha maybe as well. That was another like kind of action combat game. If that combat system was in an MMO, like,
Dude,
that's
even
it. You know?
yeah. I was so when you were talking about this, I was thinking like Helldivers 2, which I know we've brought up here a couple times before. But Helldivers 2 is so good at making you feel like you are in a grand, space galactic battle war, whatever, right? It makes you feel like you are in Starship Troopers the movie as a soldier. But you're only playing with 3 other people in this small instanced map, right? But you can see like off in the distance, there's all these other ships, and after you complete a mission, you get like launched back up to your ship, and you're in this like big galactic thing, kind of like how Mass Effect had their huge like galaxy spanning map, but it's just 4 players at a time. But like, what if you get deployed on this mission and you're not just in this small area of the map? You actually have to like work with thousands of other peoples in platoons and squadrons and then battalions. And you're like taking over not just a part of a region of a territory of a planet. You're taking over like this whole planet, and you go from like one mission not up to your spaceship, but you're just fucking pushing back against these bugs, and you go like all the way through, and it's a huge epic thing.
You reminded me of this game. I think it's called Planet Side, which is
Yes,
basically
right.
what you're describing.
Yeah.
Planet Side 2. It is just a giant. That's an MMO first person shooter.
Right.
And it is like this giant open world, like you just spawn in and you try to participate in an actual like big war that's happening. And I think that's where that whole idea is. Like they kind of wanted to tear down that illusion of a battlefield in the distance and actually have that being like, oh, that guy's doing some kind of they're doing like this one clan is like trying to raid this thing, and that's all happening over there while you're doing your own thing. And so I think that's like, that's the big dream of that concerning like first person MMO. I think that's what you're after. That's what you want. That's the ambition.
Yes, I have a pitch. Do you want to hear my pitch?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Did you ever read World War Z by Max Brooks?
No.
Okay.
I did not.
Are you familiar with it at all?
I guess in passing,
All
I
right.
know about it. Yeah.
It's this book where basically it's about this zombie outbreak that happens in the world, right? The progression of the story is told through vignettes from a rotational cast of characters. There's like 10 or 20 characters, and it basically it starts with like this doctor in this rural village, and this is where someone gets infected for the first time, and then there's this like scientist and this military general and da and you see from these different perspectives throughout the world of how this outbreak kind of like spreads and takes over other countries, and kind of like not Godzilla -1, the Godzilla movie where it's like basically about the government's response to the Godzilla attack.
Is that Shin Godzilla?
Yeah. Oh God,
I think that's a lot of Godzilla movies though.
Oh, okay. I've only watched a few, but yeah, like with Shin Godzilla, it's kind of like focusing on here's the governmental response and here's civilian response, and like the Battle of Yonkers, talking about how like they come up, like the military response comes up with this like bladed tool, and they like share this recipe for this bladed tool to like decapitate zombies and da. Anyway, all that is context for near the end of the story. Spoiler alert, I guess it's like a 25-year-old book. In the United States, they come up with this technique to clear the entire country of zombies. And the technique is to have quite literally a person within like 6 feet of another person, spanning the entire vertical slice of the United States, and then like slowly crawling all the way across the US and clearing zombies. And my idea was like, yo, what if you could be Like, what if you could be that person and be a person on the front line, or you could take the role of a commander or something. I'm not saying that the gameplay would be super intriguing. Yeah, but dude, it would just be such a weird experience to like be part of that line, and it actually extends like literally all the way across. You have like tens or hundreds of thousands of players at the same time that are pushing in this coordinated attack, and maybe you can like I don't know, maybe like Overwatch, you can opt to be a different role, and you can like zoom out and be a commander in Kansas and like giving status reports. Maybe you have to like camp and you know, talk like you assign guards, and then someone's like a guard and they have to kill someone. I don't know. I just thought like my brain immediately went to that experience for some reason.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I bet you it doesn't sound too unplausible for like a group of people to organize like a big sweep in a big game like PlanetSide and do something like that, or even doing it in like in Rust or something, and just sweep across the map so in a big line.
Like, how epic of an adventure would that be, though? You're like, yeah, over the last week, me and 120,000 other people cleared zombies from the entire United States, and we saved the U.S. Like, I don't know, that's a pretty sick little gamer story and achievement, and just a fun experience to have with other people.
It sounds like something that format of game definitely opens up to that type of like, organizing, like communicating with the players and stuff. Like people do stuff like that. I feel like in DayZ, maybe, I don't know how many people can get into a server, but yeah, if you can get like thousands of people into a server and just march across like maybe a smaller version of the US in a big line, I don't know, but it's probably difficult to coordinate all that.
Exactly. But like, what if you did, right? I think that's kind of the potential that your thinking opens up, I think. In having people think about MMOs as more than what they currently are.
Yeah. I also I don't want to like not mention this either, because the way multiplayer and MMOs works in games is part of the reason why a lot of the original versions of MMO RPGs were kind of stifled compared to actual action RPGs, is because all that data has to be sent and synchronized between everyone's machine. So it basically has to communicate with the server, and then the server has to put that information out to everyone who's playing. So if you think to like the smallest possible scale, which I guess I would imagine being a movement, a player's position. Maybe there's smaller things too, but that information has to be tracked by the server. And so basically you're a point in a virtual space to the server, and it's telling everyone else that that's where you are on that point at all times. It's doing a tick every however many milliseconds to update you, and that's how multiplayer works. And so the fewer of these packages that you have to send from every player to every player from the server, the more optimized the game will run, the less servers you need to power the game. And so that's why I think we see a lot of multiplayer games. Like if you play a single player game, it feels like fluid and there's all these bells and whistles, and you jump online, at least in like the PS3 era when I was playing first person shooters online, you'd play the multiplayer version. It would feel a little off, a little different. It's because the server doesn't want to track everything.
I got lag and mag all the time. Mag lag.
Yeah.
As it's called.
Oh, I'm sure. Mag lag.
As us maggers called it.
Something that the server usually won't track, for example, this is like an example most people are probably familiar with, is the position of a ragdoll. So if you kill someone and their body flips upside down and lands in a funny way on their face, you could go up to it and point at it and say, hey, look how funny it is to your friends. And they'll be like, no, the body's over here. Like that's something that the server won't track. That's simulated locally only. And that's an example of something that they just didn't want to offload to the server because it's not really necessary. And so when we're talking about like truly like action oriented RPG, combat and stuff, all those little tidbits that are happening locally on the machine would have to be simulated for all the players on the server. And that creates like a heavy load on the server. In a lot of cases, I think it's not tangible for most companies to do that. And so they strip it down. And that's why the MMO kind of format works. It feels basic. It's really just button clicking and you're pressing a button to do your spells. It's not like an action RPG where as soon as you hit the button, you swing the sword and damage is dealt. Like that, all that stuff is pretty heavy on the servers. That's why I imagine we don't really see fully fledged RPGs happening in a massively multiplayer sense. But I mean, I feel like nowadays technology, like we're streaming games to people's houses now. I feel like I feel like it should be able to handle that nowadays, but maybe, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that sort of thing. But just to clarify, that's context that I know. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some people listening who might be like, it's obviously not possible. I understand the context. I still think that there's there's a potential there for, Elden Ring multiplayer MMO or like a Skyrim MMO
man.
that feels like Skyrim, whatever.
Man, if we can actually have these things happen, I feel like that would be my favorite type of
We'll
experience.
probably
to
be
have in
old
games.
when it happens.
No, I don't think we're that far off, man. Have you seen any of those Improbable demos at all?
What's that? No. What's that?
Improbable, they were focused on games technology. They do like wargaming and all kinds of other stuff, but I believe they specialize in large scale simulations. So they apply that to games. They apply that to all kinds of scenarios for defense and military and governmental purposes too. But one of the things they released, this was a while ago too, I think like a year or two ago, they had like 1,000 entities, agents, engaging in real time with everything being processed server side. And they were like moving around a world. And there was collision and physics and action and whatever. And it was a tech demo, sure, but the technology is there. So, yeah, I wonder if these things are actually not that far off, because that would be sick. I mean, dude, I don't know if you saw the Star Citizen demo. I was so skeptical of this game, and maybe I still am, but damn if that technical showcase that they did a few months ago was not hella impressive. And if they really can like stream players in and out of worlds in real time and have like tons of players in space combat together, like, yo, maybe the tech is there, right? So it's just a matter of the experiences catching up and people actually thinking about these things in new and bigger ways, and not being so constrained by old design philosophies, right?
Yeah, I just like turn-based RPGs. I think there's always a place for them in my heart. And I think a classic MMO, like, it's cozy, it's simple to play, it's easy. Like, I also like that kind of thing too. But yeah, the idea of these kind of future MMOs truly kind of living up to that aspiration that you'd imagine from an open, like a massively multiplayer actual game, like the Star Citizen thing. I haven't seen that particular demo, but I have seen a lot of impressive tech from that project. Like, they do show a lot of cool things. I don't know how well it actually works in practice.
I don't either.
But there's some interesting technology there.
Yeah.
I do think they're trying to be on the cutting edge over there for that project, to keep up that energy, to keep up that like interest in the project. So it is cool to see. It is a little bit of a future fortune telling, I guess, when you follow a project like that, because I mean, the natural progression for an MMO is to actually have people streaming right in there in the game and having it work the way you're imagining, just like that. So yeah, maybe we'll see that someday. That'd be cool. I'd like that.
Right on.
I'd get into MMO. I don't know.
Yeah, same.
I was trying to find one, but I'm so superficial. I need it to look good.
I feel that. I feel that 100%. Like, I
landed on this game project called Tree of Savior. And it is by the same
name.
Tree of Savior. It's like a Korean MMO. It is by the same developer who made oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to remember what it's called.
It's a Nexon.
Odin, is it Odin Sphere?
That's definitely the
Ragnarok
name of a game.
It's called Ragnarok Online was the predecessor. Really popular, and it ended. And this was supposed to be kind of like a spiritual successor, I guess, from what I heard.
Dude, this is a Steam greenlight game. Wow.
Tree of Savior is?
Yeah.
It's old, yeah. I jumped into it
wild.
like a year ago. And it has all the like creaky, rickety trappings of a like 10-year-old MMO, because it's just like throwing items at you, power leveling you. Like, it doesn't feel good to start playing that game, but I love the art style. I love how cozy it is. I wish I had played it when it first came out, because I'm sure I would have enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. You can get a popo boost.
It doesn't feel, huh?
You can get a popo boost from now until
Yeah, like they're just
October
always
12th.
throwing stuff at you. I'm not gonna play. No, I got stuck in a box last time I played, and I couldn't get out. And I tried logging out, and I tried doing everything I could. I tried doing my special jump move, and I was just trapped behind these boxes, and then I just never played it again. So there's like a virtual character just stuck behind some boxes over there in that game. But I love the art style so much. I wish there was like an MMO that would stay like true to itself and not just become like this. I mean, I don't know what it's like to run an MMO, obviously. So like it's probably difficult to keep interest when it's so old, and also draw in new players and also keep old players. But that's an example of like a classic. It's even top down. It's it's a orthographic. What do you call it? Isometric.
Mm-hmm.
What's that called?
Isometric.
It's an isometric top down game. It's just beautiful. I just love the art style and all the little creatures and stuff. I think there's like a weird thing in that game where you're never killing like an actual animal. I think all the creatures I fought were vegetable, but alive. So you're killing like onions and stuff. And I thought it was so cute. But I think it's too far gone at this point. It's such an old game, and it's not cozy. There's no like nice progression. They're really throwing stuff at you all the time. Like I had legendary equipment before I even started moving. And when you log in, all these windows pop up and stuff. Totally not cozy, but I could see that game was once very cozy.
So maybe we just need someone to reinvent the True Savior formula.
I don't know. I just love that art style.
It's up to you.
I don't think I could do that.
You got this, buddy.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, right. Did you ever play any other MMO, or was it just you stopped playing Guild Wars 2 and that was it? Because there's a lot of new ones now.
That was it. I've played 2.5 hours maximum of MMOs in my life, and now I want to play more, but not until they're good.
I guess we're not qualified. We weren't really qualified to talk about this. I've played quite a few hours of both Guild Wars, but that's where I kind of ended. I played a little bit of the Elder Scrolls MMO. I think I've played a few here and there, like little free ones. Anyway.
Well,
it's
MMOs
super appealing to me.
MMOs,
and they're also a big time sink, aren't they?
Yeah,
they could be.
MMOs, maybe one day.
Well, I don't want to end on that because I know there's a lot of diehard fans of MMO.
That's not to disparage anyone else's taste. It's just like, yeah, I mean, for me, they just didn't connect with me, Right. And they do connect with a lot of people, and like there's a big part of me that's jealous of missing out on the WoW craze, right? Like people like fell in love with that game for 20 years. That's so cool. Like I started playing Minecraft last year, and it's one of the best games I've ever played, and I play with a group of friends, and I wish I found it, 12 years ago, right? So yeah, there's a part of me that misses that, but it's also like maybe because of the other kinds of games I've played, I couldn't go back to what MMOs currently are, I suppose. Like I need them to be different in order for me as a player to feel any kind of captivation from that style of game.
Invest some time into it. It's gotta be worthwhile there.
100%. So
I'm still looking out for like Guild Wars 3 maybe, if they ever do that. I'd be curious about it. I might jump in there because it is always has a good art style, like, anyway. Well, I think that probably just about wraps us up, right? Are we?
Yeah, I think that's
we're good on time.
Yeah, we're good. I think that's a good wrap.
Well, if you've enjoyed listening to us talk for the past hour, consider becoming one of our special dear patrons over at patreon.com/storyplayers. We offer exclusive extended versions of our episodes, so you get to see the pre and post show content where we talk for more time for all the episodes. And there's also bonus episodes that aren't real episodes. They're like kind of primeval, like, versions of the show when we first started recording. So those are pretty fun to listen to. All that and more on the Story Players Patreon. So if you can support us, that'd be awesome. Go over there, and we're hoping to start a nice little community over there. I have been Winston Powell, aka Acorn Bringer. You can check out anything I've been working on social media online. Just Google Acorn Bringer or look me up on Instagram, Twitter. You can find out all about my game of Love and Eternity and whatever else I have going on. Zach, where can people find you? What you got going on?
Yeah, we're making video games at Wildkind Creations on socials, mostly Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. But yeah, we're trying to be transparent with our development, so we are sharing behind the scenes stuff here and there. Like we just kicked our socials off again because it was dormant for a little bit. So yeah, we're trying to be pretty transparent, similar to you and how you share the trials and tribulations of game dev and the very technical things that you build as well. Like we're trying to talk through that stuff too. So yeah, check us out if that's
awesome.
Your taste.
Yeah, do it. Check us out.
Do it. Also, just
until next time. Oh, yeah. Also, just do it. Until next time, we have been the Story Players. Take care.